I hope that many of you had a chance to read the article by the MK alum, Sloan Wiesen. We reprinted the article in the current edition of the Academy News, and I asked him to come speak today to address the community because he was a bit of a trailblazer at MKA in regards to LGBTQ issues. Originally from New York, New Jersey, excuse me, Mr. Wiesen graduated from MK in 1987 after attending kindergarten here through 12th grade and serving as the editor-in-chief of the Academy News. He graduated from UPenn in 1992 as a communications major and went to work in Washington in public interest and communications, specifically to advance equal rights and religious liberty for all Americans. Sloan worked in the nonprofit sector for 12 years, including service to the Human Rights Campaign and the Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund. Since then, he has been working for 14 years as a real estate agent in Reston, Virginia. He continues to be energized by helping people of all faiths advance equal rights and religious liberty, and he shares his favorite book, God and the Gay Christian, by Matthew Vines, with anyone who might find it useful. Sloan and his husband, Randy, have been together for 24 years, and live in Reston with 2 cats. So that's something they have going for them. So please help me welcome Sloan Wiesen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Houston. I also want to thank Headmaster Namek, Dr. Flacco. Really want to thank the GSA and really the entire MKA community for this moment to advance the conversation for Ally Week in support of LGBT inclusion. Now, it is really odd being back. If you ever want to feel ridiculously old, come back here 30 years from now. Just try it, trust me. But before we get into, can people hear okay? It's all right? Okay. Before we get into how things were when I was at MK in the 80s, the state of equality then and now, and where we go from here, there's an underlying challenge I think we should address, as it remains one of our biggest obstacles for allies working towards inclusion. So let's start here with that topic of equality and religious liberty. Many people of faith support LGBT equality, including support from conservative Christians. But many theologically conservative people of faith, including evangelical Christians, have yet to discover that their biblical beliefs invite them to support equality, not to oppose it. Whatever your own faith may be, this is one of the important things that you can do as an ally. Help people of faith who are not yet supportive. Help them understand how they can support equality and religious liberty for their LGBT loved ones, not despite their strong biblical beliefs, but precisely because of them. Now, a great resource to meet this challenge is the book, God and the Gay Christian by Matthew Vines, his book, and his work at the Reformation Project is making a real difference for our country and our community. So please do check it out. It's called the Reformation Project. They have some very helpful videos there. And I brought a show and tell. This is a copy of the book itself. It's really helpful for people. So Jane Clementi actually wrote, she's the head of the Clementi Foundation. It's a must-read for all Christians, but especially parents. Vines brings great insight and wisdom to the conversation so urgently needed by today's church. The book has the information I was searching for when my son Tyler came out to me. It will have a great impact on families, freeing parents of misunderstandings about their LGBT children while letting them hold securely to their faith. Matthew Vines himself writes in the book, instead of accepting the divide between more progressive Christians who support marriage equality and conservative Christians who oppose it, this book envisions a future in which all Christians come to embrace and affirm their LGBT brothers and sisters without undermining their commitment to the authority of the Bible. So anyway, good stuff, check it out. Thank you. Now, what is it that LGBT equality advocates want? Not everybody knows. So, we want full equal rights and religious liberty for everyone. LGBT people want the same things for ourselves that straight and cisgender folks already have. We're getting closer, but we're not yet there. There is still discrimination in jobs and housing, public accommodations, in education and credit. There is still bullying in many schools throughout the nation. LGBT folks are still disproportionately targeted by hate crimes. Now, it may be better here, but once we graduate from MKA, we enter a larger world where not everyone is on board yet. So if you hear someone wondering what we want, just know that it's about equality and religious liberty for all. It's about being able to be yourself, whatever your orientation or your gender identity may be, and without fear of hate violence or bullying or discrimination in jobs or housing or schools or anywhere else. Now, opponents of equality sometimes ask people to choose between their faith and their commitment to fairness. They ask about the religious freedom of the company or the school that wants to discriminate or deny service to someone, but never about the religious freedom of the person being discriminated against. So remember, the person who is the target of discrimination also has a religious liberty interest. Their faith may have led them to be open and honest about themselves, to authentically live as themselves, to know that that is God's plan for them. So we shouldn't let anyone hijack the fundamental American values of religious freedom and use them as a cloak for unfair discrimination. Now, it's my hope that one day, sincere religious disagreements about sexual orientation and gender identity will be handled the way other religious differences already are. Many congregations are still divided over issues like divorce or interfaith marriages, and endless debates, of course, between faiths. But most people of faith realize that those differences should not be grounds for discrimination, exclusion, violence, or unequal treatment under the law. So hopefully, we'll get there soon when it comes to LGBT folks as well. We can help people understand that they may not have to change their deeply held religious beliefs in order to stand up for equality. Okay. Now, let's look back at when I was at MKA in the 80s. I was the only openly gay student here, at least as far as I knew. It felt sort of like being a unicorn, but way less magical. Now there's a GSA, as you know, there's a non-discrimination policy, there's a new dress code, it seems like there's a lot more people who have come out. But going back to my personal experience, I told my parents I'm gay back in the 10th grade. I ended up telling my dad first. I remember sitting him down and saying, "Dad, I have something to tell you. I'm a homosexual." I didn't say it quite that way, but yeah, it was a different time. He asked if I was sure, and I said yes. I said to him, "You know, I'm still the same person as before, right?" And he said, "I know that," and we hugged. And my parents would later go on to be wonderful advocates for equality, marching with PFLAG, advocating for New Jersey's non-discrimination law, and just being tremendously welcoming of Randy and our family. I was very, very lucky in that regard, and I know that a lot of folks are not. So, I came out more broadly at MKA in my junior year. My dad had encouraged me to wait till college, thinking that might be a more accepting environment. I hadn't really wanted to make a big deal about it. I just wanted to be as openly myself as my straight classmates were about themselves. I ended up telling this friend after gym class, we were actually hanging out outside the gym building and talking about music. He asked what music I liked those days, and I said Elton John, and he said something like, "Oh, I don't like him, he's gay," or something like that. He might have used a different word, actually. And still nice, because he's a nice guy. Was a nice guy. But anyway, and I said, "Well, you know, what does that have to do with his music? I mean, I'm gay too. Does that mean you don't like me?" Now, I forgot exactly what he said after that, but the point is I didn't have to then go and individually tell like 400 other people, because, you know, kind of got around. So anyway, I wanted to be out in school. Aside from not hiding, I thought it could do some good. I was never at the center of the social hierarchy, which was challenging sometimes, but it meant I felt I had less to lose by being myself than perhaps if I were like the captain of the football team or something like that. So I thought I should do it. Now, for the most part, people were personally accepting of me. Someone did once write the word like AIDS in magic marker on my locker, so that was definitely not cool. And occasionally there was some other negativity and harassment, but for the most part, my classmates stepped up and were accepting, or at least neutral. Now, regarding that article I wrote for the Academy News, Mythconceptions About Being Gay. See that pun there? I felt after 100 years of anti-LGBT discrimination not being addressed in the school paper, that perhaps one opinion piece about it might do some good. Now, I remain grateful to allies like the faculty advisor at the time, Mrs. Spieldenner, and the upper school head, Mr. Allen, who faced opposition yet still allowed the article to proceed. Mrs. Spieldenner, in fact, was kind enough to come out here today, and so again, I wanted to personally say thank you now as I did then. Thank you so much. This is what being an ally looks like. She's right there. Finally, I guess I should mention, I was lucky enough to take a guy to the prom. Now, most young people, most LGBT young people, I know they still don't get to do that, so I know I was really fortunate. The upper school head at the time actually had called me into the principal's office beforehand, saying he had gotten calls from concerned parents. And I'm not sure exactly what they thought I was going to do at the prom. Just trying to go through them, but I'm sure they were sincere. Anyway, he told me he was getting some pressure to not let me go with my guy friend. And I remember saying to him, I don't know if you can do that, but I hope that you won't. And to his credit, he was a very good guy, and to his credit, he let me go like anyone else in the face of that pressure. And that's all any of us ever hope for. We're not all alike, but we all want the same shot in life as anybody else. And that is ultimately what America is supposed to be about. Now, okay, so later in college, and then working for 12 years in the nonprofit sector, advancing equal rights and religious liberty, I found that one of the greatest challenges we faced then and still face is, as I mentioned, that there are a lot of good faith people of faith out there, and many are supportive of equality, but many have not yet come to understand how they can be supportive and still live true to their faith. And so I just want you to know, I've come to be good friends with many conservative Christians who are still struggling with this. And that's why I feel the work of the Reformation Project, the Gay Christian Network, and other resources out there are so important in bridging that divide. Okay, so let's cover a few myths, some from them, some from now, some still persist. Not everyone knows that these are myths. Okay, so sexual orientation and gender identity are generally not matters of choice. I don't really know folks who choose to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, LGBT. We are who we are. The choice is in accepting yourself for who you are, and if you're a person of faith, that includes accepting yourself for who God made you to be. You can still be true to your faith and true to yourself. You can, for example, be LGBT and Christian, or Jewish, or Muslim, or whatever your faith is. Now, some opponents of equal rights still misguidedly claim that orientation is a matter of choice, as if that were an argument for why gay people should not be covered by non-discrimination laws or laws against bullying in schools. Now, remember, race is not a choice, but religion and marital status arguably are matters of choice. Yet each of those categories is protected under non-discrimination laws. So 2 points here. First, being LGBT is not a choice for most people. And second, even if it were, that's no excuse for denying anyone their basic civil rights. LGBT people are as diverse as anyone else. We're Republicans and Independents and Democrats. We're Muslims and Christians and Jews and Hindus and every other faith. We're religious and we're secular. We're Black and Latino and Asian American and white and every other racial and ethnic background. Some of us are gender conforming, some others are not, and anywhere in between. We're all different. And if you thought that all gay guys had great fashion sense and awesome hair, I'm here to personally burst that bubble for you. Allow me to demonstrate. Wish it was there, but it's not. Okay, so moving on. Okay. Sorry, so we love as deeply as anyone else. Now maybe people know that more today than when I was growing up, but perhaps it bears repeating. Okay, and this next point is really important. You don't know who among all your friends and family may be LGBT if they're not out yet. You don't know. And many people are still not out. So do your best not to use anti-LGBT slurs or say, that's so gay, when you really mean that's so stupid or that's so weird. Because even though no harm is meant by those casual negative comments, if your friends aren't out yet, you don't know who you may be hurting without meaning to. We're cougars. We're smart, and we're fortunate to benefit from an amazing MKA education. So let's use it. Let's not insult people, or at least let's find some more creative language or something. Okay? Now, so going back, what was the general state of LGBT equality and religious freedom back when I was a senior here at MKA in 1987? So when it came to non-discrimination laws, there was only one state, Wisconsin, that had a non-discrimination law that included sexual orientation, and none included gender identity. So all over the place, you could be fired from your job or denied housing just for who you were. Now there are 22 states that protect their citizens from some forms of discrimination based on sexual orientation, and most of those, including New Jersey, also include gender identity. But that still leaves LGBT Americans in 28 states, generally without laws protecting against discrimination in all those areas: jobs, housing, public accommodations, schools, etc. When it comes to marriage equality back then, there were no states in which same-gender couples could legally marry. It was but a distant hope to be able to get married. We have friends even who had to leave the country to marry the person they love. Now, marriage equality is legal in all 50 states. I'm very lucky for that. Hello, husband. You know, love is one of the key things that made the difference with that progress. Ultimately, more people came out, more people saw that LGBT people love and form families like anyone else. And more people saw the merit of including us within the rights and responsibilities of civil marriage. They saw it wasn't right for same-gender couples who have been together for decades to be treated like strangers under the law. Now, turning to military service, I should also say on that topic, there was an outright ban on LGBT people serving in the military, and many outstanding service members were kicked out just for being gay. One decorated Vietnam veteran was Leonard Matlovich. His epitaph reads, "When I was in the military, they gave me a medal for killing 2 men and a discharge for loving 1. That kind of sums it up. Anyway, later under President Clinton, we went from an outright ban to the don't ask, don't tell policy. Then under President Obama, they ended military discrimination based on sexual orientation and moved towards ending it based on gender identity, although a certain someone is trying to reverse that progress currently. In the area of public employment back then, discrimination against federal employees and government contractors was permitted. You could be denied a security clearance if someone found out that you were gay. We made a lot of progress on that in the intervening years. Hate crimes. LGBT people were excluded from federal laws against violent hate crimes, even though we're among the most frequent targets of bias violence, along with people of color and religious minorities. Now later, President Obama signed the federal hate crimes law that changed that legal exclusion. And as we discussed before, there is progress towards faith and fairness. Within communities of faith, more denominations are affirming or have congregations that are affirming of LGBT inclusion. And one other thing here, a huge change in increased visibility. There were few visible role models of everyday LGBT folks just living our lives back then. Like many other marginalized groups, people need to see themselves reflected in the mirror of society. More people used to feel like they were the only one. And the further back in time you go, the more people were told that they were sick or evil or both. There's still too much of that, but it's getting better. So we've come a long way, but there's still far to go. As I mentioned, there's no federal law protecting Americans from discrimination in jobs, housing, public accommodations, credit, education, based on sexual orientation or gender identity. That's why we need to pass the National Equality Act. Remember those words, the Equality Act. One day it might pass. I don't know if I'll still have any hair left, but hopefully we'll get there. LGBT youth still face higher risks of mental health challenges and suicide in the face of bullying and rejection in schools, in some of their congregations, and even sometimes from their families. And that's why we need to pass the Safe Schools Improvement Act, among other things, to help schools protect against bullying. Hate crimes, as I mentioned, are still a challenge, not just for gay folks, but also for religious minorities and immigrants and people of color. And anti-LGBT violence from friends and family is still an issue in many parts of the country. And for many of these same reasons, LGBT youth make up a disproportionate share of homeless youth. Okay, so let's touch a little bit on, so what can we do to be allies? If you see bullying, speak up for the person who's being targeted. And this applies to all forms of intimidation, whether it's based on religion or race or orientation or identity, physical ability, gender, all forms. Speak up, be a friend. We're all in this together. And how fortunate we are to have attend MK and have attended MK. We have a duty to speak up and to participate in our democracy. When you turn 18, please register to vote. Then vote to elect public servants who support what you believe in, hopefully including equal rights and religious liberty. Volunteer, register other young people to vote. Call your state legislators, call your members of Congress, your senators, when specific bills come up, to speak out as an ally. If you're straight, call even when it's a gay issue. If you're Christian, call and identify yourself as such. Allied voices often carry greater weight in public policy than the groups who are the immediate targets of the discrimination. It takes all voices, and people of faith have powerful voices. Likewise, it shouldn't just be women who speak out against sexual harassment and violence against women, misogyny, and all forms of gender discrimination. Men need to step up and do it as well. It can't just be people of color who are saying Black Lives Matter when we see horrendous disparities in how people are treated based on race. White people have to speak up. They can't just be Muslims speaking out against an unconstitutional anti-Muslim travel ban and the increased anti-Muslim hate crimes in the current political climate. These things are abhorrent to all of us and are fundamental American values, and it should be Christians and Jews and people of all faiths who speak up against them. Likewise, it's not just immigrants or Latinos who need to speak up when they are being attacked. We all must speak up. As Americans, we've got to stick up for each other, not just our own tribe, in this very divisive moment in our nation's history. As we've seen from the recent tragedy in Parkland, Florida, young people can make a difference and shake things up. Young people have powerful voices to make things right, when sometimes we so-called adults haven't gotten it right. So your voices matter. You've got a voice. Whatever your background, whatever your orientation, your religion, please use that voice. As you set forth into the larger world over these next few years, our nation needs your voices now more than ever. Engage with people who disagree with you. Make friends with them, conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats and independents. We live in a time when people unfriend each other on social media. We need to be friending people, not unfriending them. Most of them are also good people, just operating with different information or with misinformation. Don't give up on them. Fundamentally, all Americans want basically the same thing. Policies that are good for our families and for our country when it comes to jobs, healthcare, schools, the environment, tax cuts, a strong national security, all of these things, as well as equal rights and religious freedom for everyone. And finally, I have a message for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender folks who may be here listening, especially those who may not have come out yet. When you do come out to friends or other folks, and if they're not fully supportive yet, be patient. When we come out to other people, we've probably had a good amount of time to first start accepting ourselves for who we really are. But the people we're telling may be just starting to think about it. Not everybody's going to get it right away. So my hope is, don't write anybody off if they're not immediately supportive. Give them time, maintain the friendships, keep the lines of communication open. And even if they never become fully accepting of you, If they are otherwise decent people and good friends and family members, do your best to be accepting of them and maintain those friendships. Okay, and also, go see the movie Love, Simon. It's an excellent movie. It's for everybody. Really good movie. Okay, so all of this is okay. Whatever your sexual orientation or gender identity, remember, you are, bless you. Whatever your sexual orientation or gender identity, remember, you are not alone. Life is a journey of finding yourself and striving to be yourself and treating others with common decency and respect. So respect others and be yourself. You're the only one qualified for that job. And again, I want to thank you, and let's open it up for some conversation and any questions. And there's no such thing as a dumb question. So I'll refer to a couple, but no, in this context, truly, you can ask whatever you like, and I'd be delighted to chat. Okay, how do we do this question thing? Okay. Is there a question in the front there?
I showed your article recently to an adult. I recently showed the article that we republished of yours to an adult, and his response was, "We didn't know better." And I essentially considered that statement a kind of like apologism, if that's the word. I just wanted to know what your opinion on that.
Okay, so you're saying that you showed it to someone, and the idea was at the time they were saying that what we just didn't know better, like at that time when it came out?
Yeah.
Yeah. And thinking that maybe that's sort of like an apology for that. I think, you know, maybe I'm being a little overly charitable here. I mean, I think people do need to step up, but at the same time, you know, we are all a product of our moment in history. So, you know, I think we have to look to, hopefully, are people approaching the conversation with open-heartedness and fair-mindedness, or is there really hatred there? And if they're being open-hearted, even if they don't, you know, quite get everything right, I try to lean into the conversation. Now that's different if you're facing bullying and someone is really getting hostile to you. I want to be clear. That's not no one in any discriminated against group is, you know, obligated to go out and lean that into being nice, you know. But when people are trying to have this dialogue and understand more, I think it's okay if we try and approach it with an open heart. Does that okay? Thank you. Hands. I thought I saw a hand somewhere. It's also a little hard to see. Oh, wait, up there?
Oh, stand up.
It's hard to see a darn thing. Sorry. Would you mind standing if you have a question?
How would you suggest addressing like the more subtle sort of bullying and attacks on LGBT people? Because the more explicit bullying can be dealt with school resources, but how would you suggest dealing with the more implicit cultural issues?
So the question was about like how to suggest dealing with more subtle forms of bullying. Is there a particular example that comes to mind, or?
Just like the examples you mentioned earlier, like with like a friend or saying like that's so gay or something like that.
Sure. So I would just say like, well, that's just not how I would say it. Now, if you do feel if someone is being targeted, ideally try and speak up at the time and just say, you know, that's not cool. But another thing is sometimes where there are moments where you just don't quite know what to do at the moment, but sometimes it's helpful going to someone later and being like, you know, I was really surprised when so-and-so said that, and I wanted to let you know, got your back if you ever want to talk or anything. So sometimes, ideally, try and engage at the time and let people know, hey, you know, saying fill in the blank anti-LGBT slur is, no bueno. But if, the moment passes, because we don't always, things happen fast in life, and sometimes you're like, oh man, I wish I'd said something, I wish I'd done something. Sometimes it can make all the difference going back later to that person who was maybe the target of that, maybe privately if they're not out, but just saying, hey, I just want you to know I didn't think that was cool, and I'm here for you. Something as simple as that. I don't know. Does that sound right? So, thanks. Oh, sorry, right there.
Are there any aspects of MK today that you think could still change to make things easier for gay LGBT people? I know you talked about how it's a social issue, but even just policy here at MK that can change well.
My honest answer is I don't know, because I've been gone for a while. It looks like, it does look like things are vastly better than they were. I mean, you have Ally Week and people signed up pledges, and there's gender neutral bathrooms. I think just one thing that might be helpful, and I don't know how this directly relates to policy, is, but just do bear in mind, as we're starting to, society is getting more and more polarized and people isolate in camps. So if we are sort of nestling in this totally, or increasingly supportive camp and forgetting about the larger world out there, I just say, at least bear in mind that later on, once we get out of here, and even beforehand, there are ways to engage and make things better, not just here, but also in the broader world when it comes to standing up to all forms of discrimination and getting involved and voting and doing those things. There's sometimes, there's a whole big country out there, and not all of it eats kale. Okay. Sorry, I don't have a better answer than that.
Let's thank. If you'd like to talk with Mr. Wiesen for a little bit further to further the discussion, or to ask him any questions you want, we're going to go to room 11, and anybody who wants to come and talk is welcome to come, and otherwise you are